And so with that little whinge fest out of the way, let us turn our attention to the number 5 spot, the Hogosha. The funny thing about me in the Hogosha is that I only played this faction until late 2010, and as you will hear in a moment, for a very good reason. So in other words, in context, I haven't touched the ID in-game for over 9 years. Even more so, the Hogosha actually suffer for a very similar circumstance as the Outcasts. But the reason why the Hogosha actually make this list of mine is because of a very short period of time, at least in disco terms short, it was completely possible to fully play out the faction's potential and purpose with the ID lines that we got. That is, until what I would like to refer to as the Gopnik Silver Incident. But I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself. Hogosha during this golden age was, as far as I can remember, the only example of a purely lawful criminal ID. The Hogosha, while affiliated with the police, navy, and Kusari trade factions, had the ability to demand credits and cargo within their zone of influence from non-Kusari factions and destroy the ship that they wouldn't comply. They were the Mafia, the Yakuza, and remember that this was the time when mining just began, and it started to stand out as the more profitable source of income, so yeah, they were in a very unique position. Playing a Hogosha was rather interesting in the sense that you always had that mental image of flying around as a guy dressed in a suit, but with a pair of knuckle dusters in your front pocket. You could always ask a Libertonian or a Rhinelander trader to stop, and then ask them a little bit more firmly if they didn't do the first time, and even as a KNF or KPT indie flew along and tipped their hat to you, you would then nonchalantly tell the trader that it would be wise to insure yourself against the bad things happening, and, for a more enjoyable stay in Kusari. The fun part, though, about the Hogosha piracy was that if someone declined, it was actually more fun to proceed with consequences that weren't just blowing the trader up. You could go around killing every single trade lane, and none of the lawfuls would even bat an eye. They knew what was going on. And the most memorable encounter, personally, was with an IMG 5K, back when IMG Guard ID could actually fly them. So they didn't want to ensure their stay in our glorious house. Their response at the time was that, oh, they can handle themselves. So they completely missed the, memo. So when they got jumped by Indie GC in the next system, I flew there and watched them getting shot when a KNF gunboat came along to help. I then specifically had to tell them in local chat that, there's no reason to dishonor the guild member, as he had told me just moments ago that he will handle it himself and die a man's honor. Now, of course, I had to then PM the gunboat afterwards and tell him in PM, out of roleplay, that, they declined my piracy demand and, play along. And the funny thing is, they did. They completely played along. And it's just these kind of moments that made Hogosha so frickin' fun for me. But, well, you can already sort of see the attitude towards a pirate ID like this can get abused. And indeed, at around 2010, a group of Russian players set upon the Hogosha and their ID in order to form the Gopniks. Gopnik is a Russian slang word for street hooligan, see chav or bogan for any other countries. So a group of squatting, semichi-consuming, smoke-begging, phone, quote, borrowing bunch of skinheads is pretty much the opposite as you would imagine the Hogosha as they are portrayed in Freelancer. But that is exactly what they were doing. They basically treated it as a full-on piracy ID, and frequently, and I mean frequently, like every single day, they would get into in-RP or out-of-roleplay trouble with a KNF KPT, both indies and officials alike. Hogosha piracy was subtle, and it was more racketeering and extortion than just straight-up 10 mil or die. And that was the best thing about it, and the Gopniks had the extreme opposite approach. The cherry on top was the silver drama. Silver ore, was bought by Narita Outpost in New Tokyo, so with Gopniks around, miners found themselves being robbed literally on the last lane of the trip. huge drama arose from it, especially since there were no POBs for storage. So these were people self-mining and then hauling stuff only to get nuked on the last few seconds of the trip. It did not last. While technically the Gopniks did not break any rules regarding their ID, the staff stepped in and changed the ID. Hogosha were soon enough forbidden to pirate in Kasari house space, similar to what Junkers have in regular house space, but in comparison to that ID, the Hogosha lacked the zone of influence to make them interesting. Even more so, once they had their guard ID removed, Hogosha even couldn't smuggle with 5Kers from the Corsairs that they were allied to. And, well, that was the whole purpose of a faction basically killed off by an ID switch. It's sad. But I still remember Hogosha very fondly. They were an amazingly unique faction back in the day, simply due to the combination of reputation and ID mechanics. But honestly, if you had to ask me, I really don't think it could have been avoided. If it wouldn't have been with the Gopniks, it would have happened with someone else. Poor Hogosha. And yet, here we are, the 5th best.